Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and this is a special episode for two reasons. Our guest being the number one reason, as we have a part two here with Mike Starr, the great Mike Starr. But this is the 100th episode of our podcast. And we wanted to do something special, and that's why we have Mike here. So the great Mike Starr,
Great.
welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Wow, you're doing great with this.
Thank you very much. Definitely keeping me busy, and I'm loving every step of the way, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Obviously, part one, we spoke about, growing up and some of your first film memories, and of course, breaking in to the business. We went in depth into John Candy, Uncle Buck, of course, Hooter the Clown, and we also talked about your greatest challenge within the industry, and on the other side of that, the most rewarding. So we really got into a lot of great stuff, and it's going to continue with this conversation here, part two. Let's get right into it with the Goodfellas. 1990, you played Frenchie. It was a cult classic. Everybody still talks about that to this day. It really is a true classic. What was that experience like for you? How did you get involved in that project, and maybe some of the stories on set and that sort of thing?
So it's interesting about Goodfellas. I don't know if I had told you, I got called in. I had 3 callbacks for Last Temptation of Christ. So it's interesting, and I met Martin Scorsese. I was doing Funny Farm. They flew me in and this and that from Vermont where I was shooting. And the reason I'm going to tell is because I found out something that it affected later on. So we had all these callbacks, and I really wanted to do the film, and I said, well, I'm going to get it. I was really trying to, and I even really worked on standard speech. But while I had these interviews, any of the one-on-one, it was my beginning connection I had with Martin Scorsese on humor. And I started doing takeoffs on different, as a kid, I saw so many of the biblical movies and and the Easter movies and whatever, and I gone to Catholic school, and I watched all them, and I would do impersonations of different. We would laugh, and that eventually had a very nice relationship because he's such a nice person, Martin Scorsese. He's very open, and if you watch this special, very complex and complicated. He's very, I guess the term they use is transparent about the world and his life and everything like that. And what was it? I remember I went in there. Yeah, we finally I really tried to do so great, and I thought I might have it. And the last time we had a circle of people, so it didn't happen. And then I think it was a year later. When was it? A year later, I read the book Wise Guy. And I was actually, my wife had just started med school, I think. So I think it was when I was out in LA, I did this play with Malcolm McDowell, Swoosie Kurtz, and send money home and getting these jobs in LA. And I go back and forth. My wife came out one time, and family watched the kids. And my friend told me about this book that the movie Wise Guy was going to be called at the time, by Nick Pileggi. And I said, geez, it's one thing, and people think, oh, you go for the Italian mob, things like that. No, I did not think I was right for any of those roles and anything else in the movie, No, I looked and I said, boy, there's an air cargo supervisor from Hempstead, Long Island. He's half Irish, half French, American. And boy, what a character. He sounds like a funny guy, sounds like really, nutty. I said, I think I could fit in that. And it's the only time I've ever done this. I may do it again. I wrote to Ellen Lewis, who is just so wonderful to me and great and so good with people. And she casts so many of Scorsese's movies, among other things. I sent a letter to her saying, I think I'm right for this, whatever. So I get an audition, And Scorsese had us reading, all of us reading the same thing, reading the same part or whatever, what I can't even remember what scene we did or whatever. I heard it. And again, we were laughing and this and that. And I got it. Well, I find out, as you know, you may not know, I don't know if I mentioned to you in the part one that my brother, Starr, whose name was Bill at the time, but when he joined Union, the one who was my stage mother and pushed me into acting and got me
Yes.
a scholarship when he was with the Jets. Well, he played Henry Hill's dad. And I was just with Chris Cerrone, who played the young Henry Hill, and we were talking about it. And he's the one they freeze frame months. Well, anyway, they were filming, I think, out in Westchester, New York. And there was when they do films, they have signs. All the signs are up for we're filming here, and the film was called Wise Guy at the time. But at the same time, I think number one show. Well, he was the number one star, Ken Wall, great guy, and he was played this character, and it was about an undercover guy, and Peter Lance wrote in it, but it was Stephen Cannell Productions. I don't know if Cannell created, I forget, but it was a huge thing, and I believe it was on Fox TV, and it was one of their first big shows, and everyone came around looking to see Ken Wall because they saw Wise Guy. And I think that's when maybe Nick came up with the idea of Goodfellas. Hey, he was a good fella, whatever. I had never heard the term, not that I would know that much about it. But so anyway, my brother would talk to Scorsese, and Scorsese said, I really wanted your brother in Last Temptation, but there was a similar sound, here in his head to Harvey Keitel and myself, whatever. I think that was what my brother told me. And a great, wonderful character actor who had worked with Marty and so many people that just adored him. Vic Argo, he wound up playing Peter. And
Okay.
originally, I think they wanted a big guy for Peter, whatever it was, but it just didn't happen. And my brother, as I remember, Martin Scorsese said to him, I didn't want to use him in that, but I knew I was going to, in the next film, I was going to put him in. That's what my brother said. So I don't know, all sorts of people, there's credit to go around. So, and then we wind up there, and I'm trying to think because I didn't really do that scene the first day I was there. You were around, there were like group shots, you stand there and this and that. And one day, Martin Scorsese says, Mike, I think I came for wardrobe. Maybe Robert says, I want you to go talk to Bob about the scene. I said, really? Well, Robert De Niro, I got to go talk to him. Fortunately, I have to say, and again, it sounds like a nighttime show cliche, but talk about a guy that makes you feel comfortable and gets the best out of you. I've always found that working with Robert De Niro because he's very supportive, and I think if you watch this thing, have you seen? It's on Apple TV. There's a 5-parter, Mr. Scorsese, because I know there's a lot of work being done on Scorsese, but this is really interesting. And you see the way he talks. That's what it kind of was, but there was a lot of laughter. That my best relationships in the business have been based on laughter. Not that I try to be the class clown, but it just, I don't know, maybe where it comes from or the way I grew up with my brothers and everything, my,
Yeah.
my family. And I, I actually was talking to him, and I imitated Frank Silvero, and I had up in a bunch of other scenes because in the key passing, I hope I'm going in the right direction for your question here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The key passing, where I just stand there, I'm like this, so I sit down and I sneak the key to Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci kept breaking my balls saying, hey, Mike, why don't you try some left elbow acting and this and that. He was so funny. He was so great to be around. So uh, I wound up that night, we were out at JFK Airport, and I was lucky enough to sit with Charlie Scorsese, his dad, and Frank Severo, and be one of those flies on the wall. Although their punchlines a lot of times were done in Sicilian. They'd end up a story. It reminded me of Robert Klein when he used to talk about the in the mountains up in the Catskills doing working out comedy there, or maybe he was just watching. He said, and you'd hear this great setup of a joke, and then the punchline would be in Yiddish, and he didn't follow Yiddish at the
Right.
time, Robert Klein, and he would do a whole thing, he would do that whole thing, and that's what I was sitting there. But there were some great stories, and at one point, Frank Silvero said to me, how you gonna do this? Frank Silvero played Carbone, Frank Carbone. He said,
Oh
how you
yeah.
gonna do this? How you gonna do it? And I'm sitting there going, an actor, you're gonna ask, what do you mean? How am I gonna speak? At first, I was like, I didn't know what to say, and he said, no, because the way you're talking now, because I would tell a story the way I am now. He said, that's just the way this guy was. He gonna, So that was a big clue for me and a big key. And he said, yeah, and it might have been one of the reasons he got killed. Who knows? Because that brilliant scene with, every scene's right, every inch of the film for me. But I'm maybe prejudiced. But the scene with Johnny Roastbeef with the pink Cadillac coming in, and Frank
Yeah.
with the fur coat, and that was showing the point that the character Jimmy Conway, real name Jimmy Burke, according to the story, said everybody be low key, be the same, and it's almost tragic comical, the scene, if I could put it that way, that they're all doing this stuff. It's funny, but the Frenchie in that scene was low keyed about it, but you could see that, what are you doing? What are you doing? And that's when that great move where Robert De Niro says, get the coat off, get this, then Frank, and that was the only time around our crew, Frank Silvero was the only person allowed to speak Italian or Sicilian. Of course, maybe Paul Sorvino, I can't remember, might have said some things, but it was very important that this group of us, it wasn't, when people say, oh, you played a mafioso. I said, it was an air cargo supervisor. It wasn't the Godfather. Not that that's bad or good or whatever. It's just,
Sure.
it was a different thing. So Martin Scorsese had a way that you wouldn't think. On one hand, you think he's just coming up with things, and then on the other hand, explicit to detail. He heard someone say something and he said, no, 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 to be none of that only. And he'd ask Frank, can you say this? So that night meant a lot. And there was a detective on the set who was in one of the early shots, and he told me stories about how flamboyant Frenchie was and fun and hey, and did things and just enjoyed stealing. And he went to Martin Scorsese. You got the right guy for the part. And Martin Scorsese would always laugh. He'd say, "Well, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I liked it. So I, by that time, was getting more comfortable, and I would joke with Martin Scorsese. Well, we would do like old Jackie Gleason bits even before the Honeymooners, or what he did with Art Carney. There was a classic character, and he would come up and laugh with me, and we'd do things. And sometimes he'd ask me trivia questions on his set. So the point I'm trying to make is that I was gradually feeling that I was comfortable here and that I could do what I wanted. That not like I'll do whatever I want. No, but it's not a blessing and a curse. I'd say it's pressure too, because when someone like that counts on you to come in and be the best you can be, which you're supposed to be, right? He's not just saying stand there and go, yeah, hey, how you doing? Whatever. He said, no, I need you to do this or whatever. So when he said that to me, go talk to Bob about it. And Robert De Niro, and I don't like to give up like people's private conversation. And there's nothing terrible. It just he would let you, if I can put it this like, what do you think? Do we know each other? He would let you have input. So I told him the Frank Silvera story in person, and he just cracked up, and we laughed. And I just told him anything that I had read or knew, and what I had heard, what Frank had told me in the detectives. And I was just talking about the character, and he listens, and I said, yeah, evidently this and that. I said, I don't know a lot about it, but, from Queens and this and that. But I would hear stories, and then when people knew you're doing the film. So we just talked, and I don't know how soon it was before we did it, but I also remember one of my big thrills that I love to remember, among other things, is that one day, I don't know if I was there because I was there for the rehearsal, or if it was I was there for wardrobe or something, but I was there, might have been that day, when I got to see Joe Pesci do the funny like a clown scene that everybody quotes,
Wow.
right? Imagine I'm just standing there. It's not like I stood in the shot or whatever, everything like that. You stand there, and I don't think I even watched the video. I just stood in the distance and watched him do it, and it was phenomenal.
What a
And
work of art, huh?
yeah, and when I watched this special, Mr. Scorsese special, he spoke about how he didn't want close-ups in that scene. How, if I'm quoting him correctly, uh, he wanted to have, um, pull back. You pull back and you see, and then I go, yeah, of course. I mean, I assumed it when I watched it. I'm not saying I didn't understand the scene, but then you see the choice he made is that you see everybody's reactions
Yeah.
when he's saying, "What? How am I funny?" And you see everyone, people getting concerned or not wanting to do, not even wanting to move. And
Right.
then he cracks up and moves, and you see the whole group crack up and laugh. And maybe if it was a TV or something, a lot of directors might have had just a close up on Pesci all the time, and I might funny, but instead he used the whole group, and that was fascinating. So when it came time to do my the entrance, I wanted to be like I was shot out of a cannon, like that,
Right.
because he was so joyous. Uh, uh, this one detective told me that Frenchie would come up and say, I don't want to say any four-letter words on the podcast, but he would say, "You still doing your wife?" or something like that, and he'd be a little more direct about it. I don't know
Oh yeah,
because you
yeah.
have to censor it, right? He
Yeah,
said,
it's
"Hey, you
fine.
still
Excuse me.
still learning your wife?" And the guy would get mad and he'd go, "Here, give her this," and he'd give a diamond ring because it was so easy to steal at that time at Idlewild Airport. I think it was not Kennedy yet, of course, but I can't remember when they put on the name. They went back and forth with it, but uh, I read the script, and Nick Pileggi wrote the book and the script, and he's in this talking about it as well, and Casino as well on this documentary, which is great. It's a five-parter. I hope they come back for more. And finally, I read the script, and a lot of times I remember saying to Martin Scorsese, I said, "Boy, what a story that is, that chapter of how they got the key." He goes, "Yeah, of course, it's a whole film." He said to me something like that. I'm like, couldn't, you got to focus on the story of, Henry and the wife and all of that. There's, the directors said, auteurs take the choice. So, it wasn't a movie about Frenchie getting the key.
Yeah.
So Nick made it kind of succinct, where it was like, hey, I can get past all the alarms. I can do this. It's great, big score, whatever. I forget how much was his. And Nick was always nice. I said, "Oh, it was so great to be in something." He said, "Mike, you made up your own lines." He's so cool. And I said, "Well, but I read your book. Like I said to him one day, like George C. Scott and Patton, I said, "Rommel, I read your book," that line. Uh, so I got my info from, excuse me, the chapter in that, and also Frank and the detective. So anyway, I said, "Mark, can I talk to you about this?" I felt comfortable enough. I don't know if I would have done that before. If I wouldn't have done it on my first day, I don't think, or if
Yeah.
I had met him already. So he goes, "Yeah, what is it, Mike?" And he really was so warm to me and respect and everything, and I was just idolizing him, still do. And he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Well, I know Nick wrote the book, and I learned a lot from the book, and I know he wrote the script." He said, "Yeah, what's the matter?" And I think he said something like that to me. I said, "Well, he says I can get past all of the alarms." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, that was the beauty of it. There were no alarms." Something like that. Whatever. I said something like that, and not knocking. Sometimes in a film they have to change a few things and make it work because, like I said, it wasn't a scene about Frenchie. But what happened? I said, he goes, "Well, all right, say anything you know." And
Oh wow.
now that's not exactly a softball. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's it is a pitch down, but it's also like, no, I know you can do it. What I'm not saying I'm so brilliant, but he gave me, for him to do that, I went, wow, I better, and not that I wasn't given 1,000%. So when we got into it, they just told me, and I don't know if I did it well enough. Ray had to say a line about when De Niro mentions about security. Ray had to say, "Yeah, there's a square badge here, this and because there was this little guy that idolized Frenchie because he was authority according to Nick's book." And it's really funny scene if you can read the chapter about how they got the key. It's hysterical what they
Yep.
did. The elaborate setup. Like I said, it's a whole movie. But you know, Nick rightfully was just boom boom putting that in, and all right, so let's say alarms. That's good about it. But then I said no, 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 and I mean not that I was trying to rewrite Nick Pileggi or anything,
Right.
or Scorsese's movie. He says, well, why you say, you know, because it can be cut. One, you know, there was a lot that had to be cut for different reasons, I guess. But not from that scene. But I said I figured I'd jam everything into that 5 minutes or whatever it was. It just
Yeah.
seemed so. I I came in and I wanted to, and another great thrill about it was, and again, not that it was my idea to, you know, to be this, but I wanted to come in with a big thing of energy because that's what he was, and a lot of times people play it safe, or if they play people, I mean, Paul Sorvino, obviously brilliant in what he did, was a different class than my character, you know. So, you know, he would speak a certain way, and that was it. He was the guy. So for me to walk and say, yeah, I can do it, you know, that would be, I felt a cop out and not true to the character. And, you know, Jesus, detective showed me pictures of his family, showed me him, you know, some stuff, I'm dead and this and that, you know, but I, I wanted I wanted to be that. And one of my big thrills is the music, because the music is so genius in it, the usage of it, that there was music, you know, kind of as I remember. But I wanted to be and I have come, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I said, big score, it's coming down, you know, and I threw in some funny lines here, you know, a line to the bartender that never made it, but you know, Scorsese would crack up, you know, and I made references. But when we get down there, he goes, yeah. And De Niro, you see, puts the cigarette out and fixes his cuffs when he gets up. And again, I hope I'm not telling any stories out of scoop. I mean, this is totally respectful of what I'm saying. I believe that the real character, Burke, not Jimmy Cowan, James Burke, if you know that he was, I might have been born in Ireland or whatever, but the styles of the people were different. Where people, Irish Americans, might not have been always dressing up. You know, if I can put that stereotype, might have been sweatshirts, this and that. What that might have been involved. Things, you know, didn't have that tendency normally. And the Italians were always known. Italian Americans were known for really dressing well, as you see Joe Pesci, and painstaking how between the great designer and people like Joe Pesci who put in their input, everyone was so elegant. And this detective, I think, had told me, someone told me that the character that De Niro played, that Robert De Niro played, was very self-conscious about trying to look right, and he'd fix his cuffs every time he got up. Now,
Wow.
who would remember that? I mean, if people would, some people would, they were really into film. But when I saw that in the film, I said, look at this. That's why he's so phenomenal, Robert De Niro. Just a little thing like that, that may not, whether it influences his performance or the scene, but may not be noticed by people. That's the amazing detail that Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro would have, you know. And there's no
Sure.
wasted seconds in this movie. And I think I was listening to Delma Schumacher, the editor, was saying something about every shot. So um, when we got there, I just said, da, da, da. And Robert De Niro threw me a softball. He said, what's the security? And that's when I just went, you're looking at it. I'm the midnight date and the commandant. And at one point, I hope I didn't squash Ray, because he had to say, oh, yeah, yeah, there's nothing. They got this guy, whatever. You know, it was really like a throwaway in a way. But I tried to space it, but I was like this, you know, the character. And uh, I said I'm the Midnight Tapeman because that's what Frenchie was. All that stuff I said about it's a Jewish holiday Monday, uh, um, money from American tourists and French tourists in France, and servicemen in, in France, was all they just sent it back.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like I was coming up with something. I read that in Nick's book. Nick has the, excuse me, just still itchy, is still healing that part of the surgery I
Oh,
had.
yes.
Uh, so the someone said, "Well, what a great idea! You came up with the Jewish holiday." I said, "No, no, no. That's what it was. I just got it from the book, and have a pretty good memory, so I just kept reading it and remembering the whole thing, and I felt so prepared, and it was so set up so well by Martin Scorsese. The feeling on the set. I've been with some people, some maybe know them, famous to say that they might have said, yeah, yeah, whatever, or I don't know, or like, no, this isn't about you, whatever. And the way we rehearsed and everything just made it one of the clearest experiences I've ever had, if not the clearest. One of the clearest I've had on a set, uh, especially having to improvise, if I can put it that way, or you know, as Scorsese say what you know.
Sure.
And so when I said the commandant, he went cut, and he cracked up, and he said, "Mike, commandant." And I said, and he would test me on trivia, and we talk about old movies all the time. I said, well, it's 1968, the Air France. When people a lot of times say, "Oh, you were the Lufthansa guy," well, he was involved in it, but not to the level. I mean, he was one of the guys, and he was an inside guy, but in the Air France thing, he was totally, it seemed like it was his idea.
Yeah.
So I said, it's 1968, height of the Vietnam War. There's Czechoslovakia and Russia doing this around the world. There's riots in America. There's things really going on. And, and whatever I said 68. I said, but the top show was Hogan's Heroes, right?
Yeah.
There was, right, if I'm correct. And someone had came up to me and said, "Oh, Hogan's Heroes was a big show." Then and she got it right away and said that. I said I was at maybe the film reunion or something like that. Someone said that to me, and I said, that was my generation. We grew up on The Great Escape and Stalag 17, all that stuff. And there was always a commandant in the prison camp, right? He goes, "I love it. Keep it in." I almost said Herr Commandant one take, and I said, that's pushing the envelope. But so Midnight Day and the Commandant, it's beautiful, like, and again, it wasn't like I was trying to be clever saying totally untraceable. It just was the character and the way I would speak, maybe.
The Great
With
Escape,
totally
is that Nick Nolte?
What's that?
The Great Escape, is that Nick Nolte?
No, Nick Nolte wasn't around yet. That was Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen. Okay, that's right.
I'm
Yes.
showing my age, but yeah, Steve McQueen was huge. There was Great Escape was one of the most super films, and there's scenes where he's always bouncing the ball off the wall in the prison. He has a glove and a ball, and he does amazing motorcycle stuff on that. And it's really, you should see it. And it's huge, the people that are in it. And we would go to the movie theaters, and they had these massive screens, wherever you were. You didn't have to be in, oh, we got to go to the IMAX, this and that. And to see that, and the whole thing where they tunnel, I believe Charles Bronson, so really, I'm trying to remember who else. It was Peter O'Toole, but it was that feeling of the film. So that's why I said the commandant,
Yeah.
and it just came to me. It wasn't like I went, it'll be funny if I say this. It was just, it came to me. But what did happen was that we got to rehearse and talk about it just as I remember. I mean, there was a lot put into this one scene. As I remember, it was Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, myself, and just Scorsese. And we were playing around and say, okay, we got to put this and get this in there, whatever. They say, okay, Mike, make sure you don't say this or da da da. And then I can't remember how much was done in rehearsal, but then Scorsese brought in department heads, the cinematographer, the gaffer, and they wanted to watch it, so we had it all blocked out. And we blocked it out. They had it all blocked out, and we, like, you mean we. So then what happened was they brought in the entire crew, and they watched it, right? And Scorsese, as I remember, because Dustin Hoffman asked me this question, so many people, I'd be on a commercial and the DP, everybody, how did he do this? How did he do that? People don't realize, especially some young people do, but they don't realize how much Goodfellas changed cinema, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and shots and everything. And if you watch this and you listen to Thelma Schoonmaker, I mean, these things are done so well, but the jump cuts or whatever they call them and jumping around here and there and so many things. And that great, the helicopter, the cocaine scene and everything. And there's so many super things that were done in it that influenced people. But if I'm correct, he had two cameras at 45-degree angles, if I'm correct, if I remember it. And what was great about it was that, and I told this director maybe about 12 years later, we had an improviser scene. And he was a very good director and everything. And I said, we had to both do it. And I was working with an older actor, right, who was wonderful. And I said, not that I would know anything about this, but I told him what Martin Scorsese did. And he goes, oh, yeah, well, no, we'll just turn the camera around and do this and that. And when we came to turn around, the person I was with, it was a different improv. Does that make sense?
Yes.
When you have something that's not a scripted, I mean, some was scripted, and then the scene I did, and I decided I don't want to badmouth anyone like that. So, or the person may not know what they said.
Right.
So, in my humble opinion, I think when he did that, among other, not only making great shots, but it was also that everything was captured. You didn't have to be concerned about turn the camera, okay, oh, match the energy, match this, come up with a funny thing again, or whatever, or like be very serious. He just got it all. I think that was the reasoning, if I'm correct. That's what Dustin Hoffman asked me on Billy Bathgate. He said, how did he do that, Michael? And that's, to the best of my knowledge, what what was uh, what was going on there. So finally, we shot it. I was on top of the world. And every now and then he'd have me throw in a line, or I'd be standing in a group, and the I forget the saying, but acting teachers would tell you, or different people would say, you don't have to be speaking to be acting all the time, or sometimes your behavior. And someone just recently said that to me, like when Johnny Roast Beef and everybody comes in, I have really nothing to say in that, but and again, without trying to be, it's like a takeoff of Ricky Gervais on Extras. I'm not standing in the back like that, or like, oh, what are you doing? But to behave, even if you're not speaking, to behave as realistically as possible. So it was interesting, and Pesci talked about it a bit, about this is serious stuff. He was telling some act that, you know, guys coming in with the Cadillac or whatever for course is serious, and that much I decided Frenchie knew to just keep his head down and not be, hey, yeah, how you doing? This is
Yeah.
like, you don't do that around, uh, especially around Jimmy Conway, the character, and I mean I did it because I was bringing. I was bringing something to him that was good. Like, it's going to be a great summer. What does he say? Rob De Niro says, and so each time there was something, and I tried to always speak in the tone of the times, or that I'm very careful, and even when I'm watching something, if I hear someone say something, whether scripted or improvised, that doesn't come from the time period, it really just goes right through me. And not that I'm any genius, but I tried it. So when I said totally untraceable, because that's what it was totally untraceable. I mean, I could have said completely untraceable, but I think totally comes out more like my character, and musically comes out, but totally untraceable. So that's basically what happened. He had me improvise a scene making fun of Maury's wig. He was hysterical. And it was a funny thing, and I did references to a 60s TV quiz show, and he was really laughing hard. My brother said, you got to see Scorsese, he's hysterical. And he's yelling to the producer, Erwin, did you hear what Mike Starr said? Yeah, I heard, Monty, I heard. But that's what my brother said. But I ran into Thelma Schoonmaker, the Academy Award winning editor, and you got to watch this, especially because she's so phenomenal, and her input and her perceptions are just really tremendous. And she said, Marty, it made 3 cuts. He just loved it so much, but the fourth time he said, you literally went over a second or two, something like that, whatever. Not that, I said, hey, make it 10 seconds or 30. Said, and to my memory is that she said to me, when you see how this is cut, Mike, you'll realize how specific and detailed it is. Then I see the movie, and you see the jump cut, you see the cocaine scene, the helicopters and everything. You go, yeah, perhaps I should have given an alternate take, a quick insult, but it was something, and I really stretched it out, and it made a big laugh. But that doesn't always mean it's right for the scene or right for the movie. I mean,
Sure.
but it was fun. It was yeah, I don't know if they'll ever put But from what I understand, people tell me that there was a lot had to be cut. And when you watch this special, I think, you know, he went through so much with studios, excuse me, and people saying, well, you can't say this, you can't do that. And Robert De Niro said that Martin Scorsese would really stand up or cleverly find ways to say, oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's great. And still do it. You know what I
Keep
mean?
it
Or
going, yeah.
let me do this. You know what I mean? It's fascinating, the process, things I didn't know or maybe forgot that he did, and even about his life, because he's a very special person. Like I said, he's very honest in this about, oh, yeah, this was a bad time. I did this, I did that, or whatever. And it reminds you of any, again, people throw around the word genius or brilliant, but it reminds you of any histories you might have watched of people or great artists or whatever you want to say. And but there was always a big kindness of him. And any people that told me they had run into him, I knew a friend of mine was bodyguarding or something in Cannes, and just he didn't know what he was or this and that, and he didn't know that my friend was a bodyguard. They said they were waiting for a car, and he just said he was so warm and so nice to talk to. He's not a like snobbish thing like untouchable. When he works, well, part of it worked with me to be humor. I mean, I wasn't coming around going, "Hey, Marty, did you hear the one about this?" He would ask me something, and I would do an impersonation. I would laugh. He goes, "I knew you'd know," and we'd laugh, but it didn't distract. That's one thing I try to be careful with. A lot of times I'll ask clearance. I said, "Oh, you know, you can't believe that someone like me, the first day or two, I'm quiet."
Yeah.
I had a I'm going to jump to something else in a second, but I'll come back to whatever. If we've done enough on Goodfellas, I'll be glad to. But I had a small part in Radio Days,
Oh,
uh, the Woody Allen movie.
yeah.
And Paulie Herman, God rest his soul, who was just adored by everyone. He and I played thieves who were, and Carlo De Palma was the DP, and Woody Allen had us come in, and we lit ourselves with flashlights. And the joke is that we're robbing the house in Rockaway, Queens, I think it was for Rockaway, right? And we're robbing the house, and then what happens is Name That Tune, which was a famous show at the time on the radio and then later on TV, calls up and says, "Do you know this song?" And I answer the phone. It's so comical. And Paul's character goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, No, I think I know this. And we sing we guess it. And then finally, I can't do the third one. And Paulie's character gets it. And I name it the sailor's hornpipe. And then we did the accent, and we celebrate and laugh. And I'm rich, I started saying. And we were celebrating. And he said, and Woody Allen narrates, and that on Monday or something, the Needlemans came back, and it was the Needlemans come back, and their house was completely empty. They robbed all the furniture, but because they won Name That Tune, a furniture truck pulls up and brings all the furniture
Uh,
out, new furniture. But
right.
I don't know why I'm telling you, but I remember uh, Woody Allen. My friend Brian Hamill, who was famous, Peter Hamill's brother and Dennis Hamill's brother, great writers. But Brian was a location photographer, and he's also had books works, and we became friends on the movie The Natural, and he was Woody's photographer. And Brian's a real street guy and a great guy and very bright and everything. And he knew how I was. And he came up to me before he said, "For what it's worth, Mikey, Woody's not a talk to me director." He says, "I know he always says, I don't want you to be offended." I said, No, thank you. He said he said he's not really, and people would say that Woody, he wasn't a guy that you go up and go, "Hey Woody, how you doing? Hey, did you hear
Yeah.
this one? Hey, I knew that neighborhood, and this and that, whatever. And I love that movie. Oh, I love Take the Money and Run. Okay.
Right.
So I had been told that even in Julie, famous casting director, when one time I read from, maybe it was on that, that you don't come in being your bombastic self or, these guys, I know these guys. So it was almost like a Seinfeld bit. I went in and was so reserved and quiet. And it was the only day I think we worked on it, something like that. So I wanted to be. And Woody Allen even said to me, he says, "Hey, you can say something you want to say." I go, "Okay, all right, you can do whatever." And I was so reserved that I knew all the crew guys on it. Did they abuse me? And there was a producer, Tom, he became a producer, Tom Riley, an AD, was a great guy who I always broke his balls because I felt he was very straight and serious, and I'd imitate
Sure.
him and do things. He leans in, he goes, "Cat got your tongue, Mike? Something the matter?" Oh, and the grips, this guy, Bobby Brennan, they were laughing, go, "Who the hell is this?" When Woody Allen said, and they were all looking at me because I was like, quiet like that. Okay.
Right.
Until the scene went, but it's funny. So I try to control myself sometimes. I don't come on the set. Sometimes I do, and it's a mistake. Or if it's the first day, sometimes I'll fool around maybe too much. I'll come and go, "Hey, everybody." And if they don't know me, it's like, what am I thinking? So I would sometimes would say to a director, after about a week of working, "You don't mind if I just like to be listening?" "No, I love it. It's great." "Then good." But there's some things you got to, let's put it this way, know your place. Or if you're working with certain people, stars, who may be totally correct in doing it, it's not the time for
Yeah.
smoking and joking, as they say. So on Goodfellas, I was lucky that gradually, I get to feel at a set and this and that, and gradually be around, and you're just overawed by everything and all the characters that were on the set and everything about it, the scope of it. That I guess there was some time because I was talking to Frank Silvera and this and that, and Charles goes, and that's what I told De Niro and Robert De Niro that oh yeah, Frank Silvera told me this, and I got to know people, and it helped me a lot, but also feel comfortable enough with Martin Scorsese. I mean, one take in the Lufthansa scene, it opens up with me throwing the puck in that bowling machine type game,
Yeah.
throwing it, and and I threw in. I'm not a Yankee fan, but 1978 was Lufthansa. It was December, and the Yankees had won in '77 and '78 over the Dodgers and in the World Series. And there was this great. He was a great guy too. Great pitcher, Ron Gidge, who was 25-3, and his nickname was Louisiana Lightning. So I figured, what the hell? I'll open it up and go Louisiana Lightning. And the guy who played my buddy, Clem Caserta, would say, "Hey, Louisiana Gods, what are you talking?" But it's so quick in the beginning, you wouldn't even know. I went, "Louisiana Lightning." Well, I think I was told, I always have it backwards, to keep my head down in the shot. It was either that or don't, or have it up. Whatever it was, one take, I did it the opposite way. Say I wasn't supposed to put my head up and I did, or whatever, or I kept my head down. And Michael Ballhaus, the brilliant cinematographer, Scorsese goes, "Michael," to Michael Ballhaus. He says, "Mike Starr was supposed to keep his head a certain way, and that take he didn't do it." And I found it quite interesting. And I turned. This is how relaxed I was by then. I've been
Yeah.
doing everything right, fooling around. I turned and went, "Unintentionally interesting." And Scorsese doesn't miss a beat. He goes, "Yes, but interesting nonetheless," and hysterically laughs. That's the kind of guy he was to work with for me.
That's
And
great.
so that's my Goodfellas stories for a while.
Very down to earth, and yeah, that's a great story. It's fantastic to hear the ins and outs behind the scenes of one of the greatest mobster films for sure, without a doubt.
Or
And
film, to me,
yeah,
film.
period,
And a lot of
exactly.
times someone would say to me, "Oh, you glamorize the mob." I said, "I wound up dead in the dumpster. Don't you remember the ending? He walks out and says, 'I'm just a schnook or a schmuck.' He says, 'This is my people all got killed, Pesci.'" I said, "Where's the glamour in that?" There
Yeah,
was the glamour of in the beginning of what he was allowed to do, even though he wasn't Don Corleone. I mean, all the things, the Copa and this and that, and the people he could resort to, in that world. But yeah, that was fun. That was laughs. But the coke and everything else goes downhill. So, and I always like to say it's not a cult film or just a mob film. I don't mean to be rude to you. I'm just saying that.
yeah,
Yeah, I would say that mobster film, but just the film itself. I mean, but of course, yeah, it's an underworld thing. I didn't mean to be so contradictory, but I think it was not that you were saying it was glamorous. I think it also, as a film and a story. I mean, I tell people sometimes, you take the scene with Billy Bats when he kills him. I said, well, if it was a Greek tragedy or a Shakespearean play, I said, or Hitchcock would put in something, and you better honor it later on. He's a made man, and you're not allowed to even touch him.
Right.
Never mind, he kills him. And that just didn't, oh yeah, well, he gets away with it. He's a tough guy, whatever you got to. So it would pay off later on as a story. I don't mean to make someone's life or killing or anything pay off, but I'm saying in the story, if we take the story, it's like if a knight or a samurai was, and someone from a lower echelon in the society did something to them, there's going to be something hell to pay. So it's interesting. Just you don't expect it. Maybe all of a sudden there's Pesci comes in and Charlie Scorsese plays one of the guys, and they're going to have him be a made man, and then you see, to my opinion, Robert De Niro's character really finally we're going to get into this world,
Right.
because Henry was half Irish. All of these things, these cultural things, go beyond what I consider mob, mafia, whatever, or they're intertwined at least. And then you see he's going to, wow, he's going to be made, and boom, and that great take that Joe Pesci does when he says, "Oh no," or something like that, "Oh shit," or something like that,
Yeah.
that he's going to be murdered. And then, I mean, again, not the most glamorous, but I think some of it, and again, you saying Marvel, yeah, it it brought not just gratuitous violence that you can throw in. It brought a world. It brought more insights than a lot of films may have
Yeah.
into a world of the rules of that
Sure.
specific world.
And still to this day, like I said, one of the greats. I mean, people talk about it all the time, and it's one of my personal favorites. I've got it here in my collection. Television, of course, you've done so much television as well on the other side of things. From Family Ties, Hawaii Five O, The Equalizer.
Oh,
You
I
know,
was I in Family Ties? I thought my brother was. Let me see. But what the Hawaii Five O Equalizer? Yeah,
Equalizer,
same crew on the Equalizer. That was a lot of them that were on Goodfellas. Yeah,
Hardball, of course, and
Hardball was a great show. Just the wrong time. Baseball and the president Sandy Grusho. It was his baby of Fox at the time in 1994, and I believe when he was released to fight or whatever, we went with him. But I got to be friends with Joe Rogan, Dan Florek, Bruce Greenwood. I mean, what a cast we had. Rose Marie came on and did something. Steve Heitner, Banya from Seinfeld, and they were really the two writers, Kevin Martin and uh, Irish name, Kevin Curran, and I'm trying to remember Martin and Curran. That's what I remember, and they were so opposite. We would be standing outside, and we were right next door to Seinfeld. And some of the writers would come up to me and say, "Oh, I love the show last night. Really." I mean, people would say, "Oh yeah, it was a broadcast. It was this." No, it was really very clever, and we were finding our way because it started out as a single camera, and then the powers that be with changing everything around. All of a sudden, we were like an '80s sitcom. It was like 4 cameras and this and that, and we had to adjust to in between that, not wanting to be completely like that, but we weren't able to be like a film. It was a great idea they had, uh, and that was fun. Yeah, but I got to do Crime Story, NCIS Crime Story with Dennis Farina and Stephen Lang, and
yes,
that's where I really forged a friendship. Dennis I had met through Joe Mantegna, but it was really James Cotton. It was his first directing. I think he wound up directing a lot of Miami Vice. He had been a big DP, and I had worked with him on the comedy Last Dragon. But that was like doing a movie. I mean, Michael Mann produced that, and
yeah.
it was a different style to play for me, which was great to be part of. And what are some of the other series? And Equalizer was fun. I not only got killed, I died of that episode. They had been to Africa or something like that, and they got some disease or something. So I said I got killed 2 ways on that one. And the
Yes,
director was Brad May. Yeah, Family Ties. I'm trying to think if I think that might be a mistake in my. I know my brother did a lot of stuff in the '80s, the early '80s, and I was still I stayed in New York.
Hmm.
Like I said, I came out to do a play and back and forth. But
Law and Order.
Law and Order, I
Yeah.
was a cameo on the pilot too as a truck driver. They asked me questions, but I got a lot of opportunities. What a great thing to be part of. You see the cast they have and the guest cast in Law and Order. You see they got all this New York theater people, all these people on it, and
Oh
say
yeah,
it's part of a rule. You better be on Law and Order if you're in New
right.
York.
That must absolutely. Chicago Hope, another one, right? That you've been a part of as
Yes,
well. Yep.
that was where were we living in the Bronx or Pelham. I remember getting a call and trying to think. The lead guy became a huge director. I'll know his name in a second, big time. But there were so many wonderful people on that, and I think I'm going to play at least finally an orderly. Will I be a doctor? What am I doing there? I didn't even know the script, and they brought me out from New York. I'll never forget. I get there and I read the script. I'm playing a psycho who bit off a flute player or flautist uh, finger, and then something like that. It was some kind of musician, and I bit his finger off and swallowed it. The character, and the episode had to be they had to operate on me to get the finger out.
Oh
So
man.
that Peter, oh God, the lead, great director now. Peter, not Peter Brick. It'll come to me, but the B, but they. So that was Chicago. That was a great experience in the cast.
Hmm.
Wow, everybody involved in that. Yeah, that
Frasier
was
was another one, right?
Frasier was a lot of fun. I got to
Yeah.
play. There was a whole episode about how they were talking about the Queasel, not the Queasel brothers. Brothers. That's my friend's group. You see, um, had picked on them. They had to get their toilet fixed, and they were gonna try to. What the hell I was doing? I think I had a screwdriver in the scene. But what happens is that John C. McGinley, my friend who got me on Scrubs, actually, for an episode, McGinley played. We were the plumbers, and McGinley comes, and David Hyde Pierce's character Niles says, "Oh my God, it's him! It's he used to pick on us. Remember those brothers? They used to pick on us." And Frasier gives him this big lecture how you have to rise above it, and it was such a great show. And Mr. Burroughs, the director, is like the most famous sitcom director, and James Burroughs, who did all the Taxi, all this stuff,
Yeah.
and it was a thrill for me to be just standing there with these people. And John Mahoney I'd worked with a few times, and it was, the whole cast was just perfect. But I just tried to listen and not be too much of a clown. But what happens is Frasier lectures him how you move on. Revenge is the best. The best. You living well is the best revenge. Whatever. I think that was the one. Where they were saying that. I don't know. But finally, what happens is John McGinley goes, "I'm going to have to call." I think it was Crizzle. Yeah, we were the Crizzle brothers, and we used to do this. And finally, he goes, "I'm going to have to call my brother Billy, and he'll come help us." And only Kelsey Grammer could do this. He goes, "Billy," something like that, and he's freaked out because I used to pick on him. So what happens is he's trying to he's trying to be real, um, uh, high-minded and rise above it. And I thought to him, he says, "Do you remember the brothers?
That's great.
And I start doing this. Oh yeah, you know what I used to do to this dork? And I keep, and then we dressed him up like this. Then we did this, and finally, and Frasier's as only Kelsey Grammer can do, does this whole burn and this and that, and finally he freaks out and shoves my head in the toilet, which didn't show, and he goes, "Run, Niles!" And you see me going after him. I'm drenched, you pour water on me, and I go after him. It was
That's great.
hysterical.
That is great. Another one, of course, Angelo Grotti in The Office.
Oh boy, that has such a following. They even bring me in the office conventions. That was such a great experience because you're talking about the best there with Steve and Steve Carell and the two fellas. It was just great. But I think I originally read Big Kiss in New York, Rockville Center. Brought me out to L.A. And I think I saw him originally as Luca Brasi, which Steve one take said, "Yeah, that would work, this and that." But they came down and they talked to me, and the idea was you're not supposed to know if he is a mobster or not. It's like that was part of the big part of the humor.
Right.
And evidently, I've listened, and I was on one of the podcasts or something. The Office Girls, I think it was the one Office Ladies I did, and people tell me, it's not me saying it, that not because of me, but it was, I think, one of the executive producers, someone else, showrunner, did one of their favorite shows ever, episodes, and that's saying a lot with because every show was great. But uh, that was it was interesting. I mean, they worked at it, and they really were very careful, and the showrunner, director, and the showrunner about, and Steve involved, when we were rehearsing about really walking a fine line. But the humor, things like, hey, if the sauce doesn't come on the side, I send it back. Which people are like that. They don't have to be more things. People of certain cultures.
Right.
They even asked me to explain what gabagool meant. I said, "You're putting me on, right?" Because that might have been very come out of the Sopranos. So I did just a very language. I did it as if it was a university. I said the C becomes the G with people from certain areas and dialects and everything. I said I'm not Italian, but speak okay. And then I was telling about it, and of course they ran with it, and Steve Carell ran with the gabagool and all that stuff. And yeah, that was a great experience being around them.
One of my personal favorites, The
White.
Blacklist.
Wow, I was just thinking about that show, and yeah, I was happy, but with things, I said, well, maybe no, but nothing that I acted, but I said maybe a little more reserved on that. I said, I don't know, but I remember thinking something about it. And that was during COVID, and we had the shields and the mix, and they tested you every day on set,
Oh, yes.
and if you were off 3 days. But I got to say, James Spader, I was mentioning before about detail. Oh my lord, you want to talk about a guy that's detail, and not a guy that tells you should do this or whatever. He was just super respectful. He loved the movie Mad Dog and Glory. And I told him about how much I loved everything, but I loved Seinfeld when he was on as the guy from
Oh,
AA.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Step 9. And he would literally do things. He'd come over and say, you have the, and not nasty, but to either the director, the producer, or the prop guy said, this is the wrong chess game for him. Or there's no espresso in his cup, and it's funny when I'm on TV shows, for some reason, I pull back. I don't try to do too much. I really try to think, well, this is not about me, the show was sometimes. And there was even a script thing that was contradictory. And I said, I'll just say it. It's, I don't want, people might get offended. And James picked it out and went, no, it doesn't. I said, I wanted to say so please, Mike, say anything you want. And he was so helpful to everybody and so specific. And I mean, he's just a phenomenal actor. I mean, we know that. And
That's
I
great
mean,
to hear. He seems like such a great guy, and he is one of my favorite actors.
he is
Yeah.
understandably so. I mean, some writers might say, oh, this, but I heard he would call people and say, wait a second, how about this? And, people want to say, oh, there might be people say, oh, the actor, but I got to play an interesting character on that. And it was the title of the episode because his name was, Bino Babe, like a Babe
Yeah.
Ruth, because he had so many hits, something like that, home runs, and Bino Baker. And that was a beautiful experience. Thanks him and the people working on it. I mean, were wonderful. But that was a big thrill for me. They flew me there to New York, and then Ray Donovan was a beautiful
Oh,
experience.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, and it was what was his name, Mush on it or whatever what's his name, and he directed that one. Uh, one of the characters, and John Voight was really always like so helpful and this and that. And, I mean, the cast on that was fun, and I got to do some physical action, and then had a stunt double, and run my silly way. But the character, and I really worked at the South Boston dialect, um, and also you weren't sure, did he really have Alzheimer's, this and that? Was he faking?
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing. They break me out of the nursing home, and there was met so many people. A British actor on that, and of course I never knew he was British. And he introduced me to his son. He was a big Goodfellas fan, and I mean that cast was something. And it was I didn't get to work with Lee though. He wasn't in those scenes, but I know people who know him. And you only hear the best things. He's super. But it was a whole separate thing about uh, where John's character and mine, and I was a corrupt guy in the '70s, corrupt cop, and now now they know that he was hiding something anyways, and then that whole scene with the electrocution and this and that
Yeah.
was like, oh, and that was a super great experience. The other one that comes to mind is Shameless,
Oh
uh,
yes. Yeah.
where I did a scene, and Bill was so great, and it was just me and him and this wonderful director. Was her name Sonia? I'm trying to think. And she was super, and it was just us. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like I think people are like, the whole kid. Not that that's bad, but uh, it was just one on one, and we had to really create. And again, Bill was the guy and the director. Well, how would we do this here? Because there's a real comical thing where we discover each other. We're both squatters, and I'm the
Right.
gardener. He keeps calling me gardener guy or whatever, something like that. And I said, stop calling me gardener. And we go around, or I'll call her right now. I will, with that type of old humor,
Yeah.
like, don't push, don't try. I'm gonna call now. Call, and we worked out this. It was like really doing theater, and they would say to me later on, said, "Don't you want to direct, Mike? Sometime." Not that I was directing it, but as he directs, and that was huge hearing it from him, and. And then we told old stories. We talked about the 60s and the 70s and so many things. And he was just such a wonderful person, super loved on the set. I mean, from every person on there, and so kind. And we finally got to do this scene where now we're friends, and it opens up with him pouring the expensive scotch and this and that. And I go to light up something and a pipe, and he says, it was such a great line. And of course, the way he did it, he says, "You smoke crack?" And I get very indignant and I say, "I don't smoke crack." And I go, "It's crystal meth." And he goes, "We're gonna have a good summer," or something like that. He says, "Guard that guy, we're gonna really have a good summer. So this is gonna be fun." And then I didn't come back, but that was fine. That was it's nice to do these, not because of me again, but these gems sometimes.
Yeah.
I was even on Glee where I got to do a scene just with the guy who was a teacher, and I played a security for 40 years or some 30 years, whatever, and I'm sitting there watching him rehearse, and
Oh,
out of the
cool.
back I clap, and then it's just me and him, and he was super, and I told him I didn't have to fake enjoying him singing this and that, so they had a whole other set going on with everybody, the crowds, but I say, "How would you doing that?" So you get to do these things. John LaRoquette show, who was super to me. And I'm just thinking, I'm offhand, there's any ones you have questions of. I know I'm had too much decaf tea. I'm talking too much
Oh
green
no,
tea.
that's fine.
But
No, love to hear it. Yeah. You've been a part of so many different projects. Obviously it changes from project to project, but what's the process like for you personally preparing for a role? Once you got the role, how do you go about it? Getting into that mindset, into that character each time. Is there anything in particular for you?
boy, it varies. I mean, the way I spoke about Frenchie, but I had to do this thing. Jack Bender produced and directed most of them, and Peter Weller directed, and the woman who was on ER, she directed. It was called Mr. Mercedes, and I had to play a hospital volunteer who was very sweet and nice, and little, they would say maybe another time they might say a little slow or whatever, and very innocent. But in the show, they take over, Miss Mercedes takes over people by them looking at these games, these video things or whatever, and I become this killer, and then wake up like, where am I? That type of thing, a Jekyll and Hyde or whatever, like, so you have to be really work at being an almost hypnotic bad guy. To kill a Rottweiler. I had destroyed a DA's house. I steal this weapon that he has in there from a rock or something like that or whatever the guy. And I'm smashing things. I think you do what's in front of you. I mean, like a lot of times, if you read anything when David Mamet talks about acting, I mean, it seems you do what's on the page and not get so much heavy. Like, okay, now this he was a guy who was hypnotized or whatever. Or like in that, he's just a sweet guy. And in fact, one of the directors says, "Oh, you like Lenny or whatever?" Okay, maybe like that or something like that. But just an innocence. So whereas in Billy Bathgate, I played this guy who was a no nonsense guy that Dustin has to eventually shoot me in the face, but comes up to collect and he's saying, "What is this? What's going on?" Maybe sometimes I'll access someone I know or a rhythm that they speak like, you know, uh, and maybe I would do that. And my friend Brian Rosa, PhD in this and that, and I wonderful actor, he'll coach me in dialect sometimes, so you know about the breathing or there's different ways. Huh. It's an interesting question because there's so many acting schools and styles. There's a great book about 9, 10 different teachers that I've read. And also, I kind of on the job training observe people and what works for them or
Yeah.
whatever, but not try to imitate them. But I used to really go really, and I think you can really screw yourself up mentally, psychologically, or whatever by, I am the guy and never get out of character. I mean, that's people's choices. And some of the most brilliant people might have worked that way. And my friend Brian would say that Stanislavski would talk about how there's a distance you have to have from it, not fake, but know that it is make believe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying right before the takeout, hey, what are you doing? Hey, how's everybody? Well, now I want to do this, whatever. But
Right.
or when you get out of it, sometimes it might take a second to calm down or whatever. But uh, when you mean by preparation, I mean I try to do my research, or if I've known people like that, or try to imagine um, the what ifs they talk about. I think Stanislavski talked about, like what if I was there? What if what if I was this person? Or what the basic questions that Brian always tells me from, I think, Stanislavski, where he says, "What do I want? How am I going to get? What's blocking me? What's the obstacle? What do I need? What do I want?" And sometimes let it flow naturally instead of again, acting teachers say, "Don't gild the lily." Don't try to do so much. And
Right.
you know, if it works for the character and you try to keep an organic thing. And sometimes I'll sample people like in Dumb and Dumber. The laugh I got was from this guy. I'm like, ha, ha, ha. Talk about, I might do something and hopefully make it organic. But there was a great pub across the street from the Queens Criminal Courthouse, the Tiny Nut Tavern, and this guy Bill Mallon. The characters would come in, but I'd go sometimes with my parents or my brothers, and then eventually with my wife and this and that. And Bill Mallon he used to come see me in shows when I was in college, but he would have this thing, me, you, oh, you, ha, ha, ha. So maybe you think if that laughs,
Yeah.
that works when you're building the character, or it comes
Sure.
to me, this would work great because he's a ball breaker. The guy, like, now we don't see him being nice at all in Dumb and Dumber. Now he gets a big laugh out of these guys. He's laughing at how they screwed up. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And hopefully it comes from a sense of reality, even though it's a comedy, and things can be big, but not necessarily unbelievable. Not that I'm always successful at that. But I guess, yeah, finding people who would say, find a place of truth and, who is this guy? But not to torment yourself or torture yourself, I think is advice I'd give. It can be dangerous. There's people who have done brilliant performances, and you wonder sometimes, what the hell did that do to their subconscious? If the subconscious doesn't know the difference, whatever. I
Yeah.
think of that sometimes when I'm reading, whether it's a self-help book or different philosophies or whatever. Say, well, geez, if you walk around going, I hate everyone, I want to kill, I want to do this to kids, well, you know,
Right.
and I'm not saying there are things I've done, characters that might not be the finest people on earth, but sometimes people say I play a bad guy with a heart or something like that or whatever. But you use yourself. But I mean, I certainly there's some things I've done. I said I couldn't even see myself doing, in the world. And then you get to that place or know that it's make believe, and if it works on screen or on stage, then it works. You know,
You touched on that, gently there. 1994, of course, Dumb and Dumber was one of the biggest, films around that time. It was just such
really.
a huge comedy. You, of course, would play Joe Mental. What was that experience like for you being a part of, obviously at that time you didn't know it was going to be as big as it had become, but
True.
it was huge. So, what was that like for you?
That's really true. That's interesting. You know, I remember I was out, I would come back and forth, and my brother would let me stay with him out in, because there was so much work and not work in New York, really. So I'd come out, or I'd bring the kids, or sometime this and that, or one, and the all, we come out and stay with him. And I remember driving around. He was driving me around. We were in Toluca Lake, Burbank area, and he would read Variety all the time. I never did those things. I guess I should. But the headline was Jim Carrey gets 7 million, whatever it was, for the story I had heard, and I wasn't cast yet. The story I had heard was that someone at New Line or some people said when Ace Ventura bombs, he'll be happy with 100 grand or whatever, something like that. I guess that didn't happen. And Jim was great. What talk about a hard worker? I mean, he's up there with Tracy Ullman and George Cullen as far as people I saw constantly working, or like James or Jeff Daniels did, or John Lithgow. I mean, all of them. I mean, I mentioned already De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. I mean, specifics, but he had a lot of funny stories for me, and would do. We all did pranks. Farrelly brothers would prank me. I'd break their balls. We'd do stuff, and Jeff was great, and I did things with him. Great talks with him. But I remember I was doing Hardball, the pilot for Hardball, and there was, I don't know if Troy Evans went to someone, the actor Troy Evans went and told the agent, said, "Here's this thing. I know he did it for me one time. He was on, uh, he was really interesting, Troy, and, oh God, I'm trying to think of the show, but, anyway, uh, said, you should tell," or whatever. I don't know if we were at the agent I was with at the time at a party at his house, something like that. Whatever, this agent who wasn't there long submitted me or something, or sent me, said, "You're going to go in on this Dumb and Dumber." I said, "Really? No kidding." I thought the whole thing was cast. I think Karen Duffy was cast from day one,
Hmm.
and they knew there was something she was going to do it. I recently found out from her and from Fred Stoller that Fred, at one point, the guy I punched through the telephone booth,
Okay,
uh,
yeah.
he was going to be my partner, and Karen might have been the Lauren Holly role, and of course Lauren Holly was great, and she said, "Oh, she's great." That they were thinking of a different way, maybe at one point in the beginning of her playing that. Then they wanted to decide, well, maybe how about a woman partner or something like that, whatever, it's a casting. But and Fred told me that they came up to him the day he was doing the part and said, "You were going to be that character." It was
Oh,
great. Fred was like, "Huh, really?" You know. But anyway, it was a guy, Chris Browning, and working with Joe Rogan and everything. He was an actor, and I said, "Holy shit, I got this. I don't even have a car yet." I was doing the pilot. I had a car. I said, I was being driven to this. I forget. And Chris Browning said, "I'll take you." And it was all the way on the other side in Santa Monica. So I said, okay. When we were doing publicity shots for Hardball, I joked. I said, the things 99% don't get in. You picture, hey, oh, and then sometimes you see yourself, very rarely, but up in this, you go to NBC studios, or Warner Bros. And there's pictures of other sitcoms or shows. So he said, "I'll take you." So I said, okay, where is this place? So I give him the wrong address. I went to the wrong building,
oh no.
Santa Monica. And they have all these, like, it's not like being in Burbank or Century City. They're like, things look like they're in shacks or whatever, or cool cottages or whatever sometimes. And I said, holy shit. Oh, I read it. I always do this. I said, this is the address. It's across the way. Then I go to the wrong room, wrong on the floor. And then finally I go to, I go to the right room. And it's almost like I want to say in my mind that they were leaving, and it was dark in there. And the Farrelly boys go, "Mike Starr." I said, "Oh shit, I'm sorry. I tried this. I got a ride over there." Blah, 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 my usual act. And they said, "Oh, good. Let's talk about it." So they told me, and I think that they were in on it too. But Jim requested me,
Huh.
as I remember. And Jim, not that comedians can't play serious actors. You see so many great performances, but he said he didn't want someone known for stand-up comedy or that it would be bits. He wanted someone, and I think if I remember right, and maybe the Farrelly Brothers, they wanted someone who had played killers in movies.
Okay.
something like that, that were known for playing that. And again, it's not saying, oh, comedian, oh, they were gonna, obviously even he, shows that, and so many great comedians do great dramatic roles, and vice versa. But um, but the that's what I had heard, that he wanted someone like that, and I think he had wanted me to do something in Ace Ventura, and agency I was with. So, oh no, he's busy, and I wasn't. But I don't know what, that was another story. But uh, anyway, I didn't even know. I came in about, oh God, I don't know. I was up to watching kids, this and that, but somehow my weight would go up and down. I came in about 35 pounds over, and then I had to go do hardball and still lose weight. I said, this is crazy. I look like an offensive tackle. But anyway, and it worked for the character, this and that. I mean, I was always working out, but whatever dietary habits I must have been doing, not thinking or whatever, maybe drinking beer at the time, I don't know. But I came in, when I look at that, sometimes some shots are okay. I say, oh my Lord. And, I had to do these falls and this, all right. And, it's just the ego actor. Sometimes my weight would go up and down. I had played at different weights and crazy, like a yo-yo guy, I guess. So I get to the set, on the first day, and I meet Karen Duffy, and she was quite a character. She was the Charlie girl at the time. She had a show with the commentator Michael Moore. She had a show on, she was like I would say MTV and all of that. I think at the time MTV, yeah. And she was great, and she's a producer now, and chillax. But so I don't even know what I'm doing, and I get there up to, that's right there. That was the first day I was on set. But the first thing was we shot in Utah and Colorado, Eastern Colorado, and they did exteriors in Rhode Island. But I get there, and the Farrelly brothers, oh, we're going to have dinner. But it ran over a number of hours. They were late. So I was just like sitting there waiting, and I'm watching hockey. And Seabass was played by the great Cam Neely, Hall
Uh,
of Fame hockey player, Hall of Fame human being, I always like to say. And he's sitting watching. I didn't even know he was. And I'm rooting for the other team or something. Or like, I'm telling him. And I knew one guy's name. He goes, yeah, he blew out my knee. I said, I'm doing great. He goes, no, he was legit. The other guy wasn't. He was clean. And I got to know him, and I'd sat with him when maybe we went over lines together or something like that. And he was really it is a class act. And I don't know, I'm waiting, and finally the Farrelly brothers, we wind up, they reopened a restaurant for them. I remember it being late at night, and they showed me. I'm not a guy that watches myself on camera. It's not my thing, because I think it makes me uncomfortable. I think that I would try to change what I was doing. So so um, they showed me the scene with Jeff's tongue getting stuck on the ski lift, right?
yes.
And then showed me the snowball fight, which every classic, so many movies would have a sweet thing, a Hallmark movie of the two playing snowball, and he starts pelting her. I lost it. I laughed so hard. I said, I know we're in for something good here. Sometimes you don't know, you do know. Goodfellas, you felt like, wow, I know there's something special. You're watching Pesci and De Niro, you say, there's something's got to be right about this, and what Scorsese, but I don't know if I knew how funny it would be and how it would work. People sometimes like to put it down or say, oh, yeah, well, you don't have to think, or it's dumb or whatever, because of the name Dumb and Dumb. And the comedy and the writing on it, I think maybe my only improv I can remember, I might have improvised, guys, guys, guys. And, but, you'd be sitting out, we'd be at some truck stop or whatever it would be, a place maybe where we did the Atomic Peppers and was a real restaurant. Maybe be sitting outside like a convenience store, 7-Eleven or something, and there would be Jim Carrey sitting in the director's chair. I'm talking to him, and these kids come by with a slushy or something. He go, "Hey guys, what are you drinking?" And they didn't know who he was, and he goes, "What are you doing? A Slurpee?" Something like that. And they go, "Yeah, yeah, cool." And he was nice. He was just, and I'd be in an interview maybe. We'd be at some mall. It might be a restaurant or something. I had to talk to someone. He would walk by again. The crowd. He wasn't. I mean, you knew Living Color and Ace Ventura was starting to. He was starting to become well known, but not everybody. He'd walk by and lean in. With that move he does. He goes, lean in while I'm trying to have a serious conversation. Go, you a slayer. and he'd pull away and walk away, and then he'd do another story. And he told me a lot about his life, and it was really great. And unfortunately, there was an interview I did, or maybe way back when, it might have been on a magazine. I don't think it was a podcast if they even had him yet. I said that when they're doing the poking of me and that, and and I lose it, uh, people that know me, I have a lot of these neuroses and for different reasons, and I poke and try with this and that, or certain things that, when he screams in my ear, well, I didn't know it was coming, but people that know me, I said it was their revenge because I would complain. I said, do me a favor, don't point, don't poke. I have all these rules sometimes, and I can be very annoying, but sometimes it would really, I'm getting a little better in my old age, I hope, but things like poking from behind, I would jump, whatever.
Yeah.
So they got a big kick out of it. And I, as you talk about preparing, as an actor, they tell you to use things. So I knew how much that would bother me, annoying. So I used that. And again, you want to laugh so hard. So biting my lip and I go like I'm going to go to the gun, whatever, and it was old school, whether it's Jackie Gleason or Edgar Kennedy from the 40s or whatever, a lot of that humor,
Yeah.
the slow burn. I did that in Funny Farm, thanks to George Roy Hill. But I said something, and it just happened recently. Once in a blue moon, someone will say, I heard you were really mad at the two actors in that for doing that. And I said, no, 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 that's what I said. Oh, God, I had someone in the gym say it to me years ago. I said, what? No, 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 God, did I miscommunicate that one?
Oh.
No, I wasn't mad at them. I was playing the character, was upset at them. And I'd hate if someone ever said to Jeff Daniels or Jim Carrey in an interview, when you did Dumb and Dumber, that guy was mad at you, something like this. It wasn't. And I mean, they would know
Yeah, I'm
better if,
sure they understand that. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had said something and it might have come out the wrong way or been misinterpreted. I don't know. But
What would you say is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
there's a couple of good ones. Joe Montagna was always very good with me. And I was doing a play in Buffalo of Mice and Men. I did it 4 times in different theaters. And you were talking about preparation. It made me think of it. And I would do this whole heavy thing. And there was a great theater actor, Bob Donnell, that was known as a Korean War veteran, a Marine, and everything. And he played Slim, and he was that little laid back. He played a lot of that characters. And he was, after a couple of weeks, I got to be friends with him through the actor Steve Henderson. And he kind of mentored, we talked. But anyway, one of the first things he said to me, I'd be with that Lenny and and we'll get prepper, and we're doing 8 shows a week. And he said to me, man, I see what you're doing, and I know your act. I get your act. I have the same act. It's called Diamond in the Rough. You act like you're just a street guy, or you're off the, or a natural, this and that.
Yeah.
I said, but I know you're trained. He said, but this thing you're doing, this prep, he said, it's going to kill you, man. I was 32 at the time, 31 or something. He said, what are you doing? He said, I want you to do me a favor this week. Take an episode and go be really bad. I said, what? No, I want you to be really bad. You know why? You can't do it. You can't be bad in this. You've done your work in rehearsal. He said, so get out there, put your little Lenny hat on, your overalls, and just do it.
Yeah.
And it really freed me. I felt every night, oh, why you gotta get killed? And the puppy and the girl, you ain't so little as my son. I would put myself through these things sometimes. And sometimes you don't want to do too much what they call sense memory, or what if. I never like when someone says, oh, imagine this is such and such in your life, and it'll, you know, and they're dead, what if something like that. I go, no, no, thank you. I don't want to imagine that. I mean, Jack Bender gave me, I had to do a heavy thing in Mr. Mercedes with the guy playing with Scott, who was playing my brother. And he gave me an interesting thing. If you had to say this or whatever, but it wasn't anything so harsh, but it worked for me. I mean, there's certain things that can work, but Bob said that to me, and it really opened me up and opened me up with him that, try not to do too much to yourself. Or he said, 8 shows a week, you're going to kill yourself. I mean, if you go through these cycle, like people, I see people do, and there are some famous people, unfortunately, that have done damage to themselves in the past year or whatever. Things they, and sometimes they would drink. I don't know to it, but sometimes it's the method of whatever power they're in. It works great on screen and stage, and sometimes I'm not sure. I can't say for sure that it's damaging, but I know I was doing something to myself. And the other advice I got was Phil Goldfarb. He's been everything. He was an AD, I think, on Taxi Driver. He did everything. He was a producer and this and that. And every now and then he'd give me some great advice. But I got flown out. I was very hot at the time, 90s, for the client. I think I got flown out. I went out there, but I made the mistake of flying the same day, I think. And boy, did I learn. It took me a few times of doing that to learn that was a mistake coming from New York to LA, no matter, how young you may be. I was like 40 or something like that. I brought out for the client. They wanted to see me. So I read the book on the flight. And Joel Schumacher was a wonderful man. He passed away a couple of years back, director. And he always said he wanted to use me in something, whatever. So I meet him and he he tells me, I love the movie The Bodyguard. And I went with all these young people from Santa Monica. We watched it. You were so wonderful. Instead of just going, oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Right? And said the thing, and he gave me such respect. Instead of just saying thank you, I said, oh, but you got to see, I did this movie Mad Dog and Glory with Robert De Niro. I started whatever, saying, now you got to see. Why the hell I'm selling myself like that? And it was an odd character I played in Mad Dog and Glory, which I loved doing. It was someone fashioned after someone, a very different, hopefully unique character. But I went, he goes, oh, really? Because it wasn't out yet, or it just came out. He said, I haven't seen it. He said, what are you playing that? And I realized I'm going in for a bodyguard. He liked me in the bodyguard. And now I'm telling him, he says, well, what did you play in that? And Mr. Cool and New York actor and whatever the hell I thought I was, uh, he goes, bodyguard, I turned into Ralph Cram, the hum, the hum. He goes, well, what did you play in that? I went, well, bodyguard. He goes, geez, Mike, you don't want to do this again. Play another bodyguard. That's what this is. And I'm like saying, and it was like, wait, no, I could play one of the Memphis Police. I can do accents. I could do that. I went into this whole desperation thing, right? So I told Phil. He said, did you go to your knees, Mike? I said, at least one knee. He goes, let me tell you something about Hollywood and going in. He said, what do you think the worst disease is here? Worst disease. I said, of course, AIDS and things like that. And he goes, no. To people in Hollywood, it's unemployment. They can smell you a mile away. And again, he wasn't making light of disease. He was trying to tell me, he said, that's why I take the bus once a week, because people ride around in their cars because they don't want to be around anyone they think that might not be at their financial level, whatever level.
Right.
He said, there's the old showbiz term, never let them see you sweating. And he said, you have to take every interview out here. I wasn't always successful about it, but he said, I want you to take, anytime you go to interviews, as if you're on a country club playing golf. And you come up and say, can I join your foursome? They go, no, we're full. He goes, oh, fine. Mind if I play through? He said, you have to be that casual.
Yeah.
You have to be that casual about it because people can smell it a mile away. And that was great. Whenever I would see him again, I'd tell him, you gave me the greatest advice. And that's about getting a job, and not always successful about it. Sometimes I remember I went in on something one time and everything wrong. I wound up working with this director eventually with my brother, and my brother both said to me, did you spill coffee on the director too? What else did you do wrong in there? I was telling him I said this, and my brother has some of the funniest casting, and audition stories. But sometimes when I go all the way wrong and fall off the edge. But Phil had told me that you have to keep a more, not that you're arrogant about it, but keep a more laid back attitude, especially in LA.
Sure.
He said, because people are afraid they might catch a disease of unemployment and desperation.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like, they really, do such a great thing on the Seinfeld Network episode, but I mean, they go all the other way with George going, if this, now this is not what I do, and George stands and starts saying, no, if you want that type of broadcast, no, I don't do that, and I'm not compromising my principle. And it's really great because he had none, to do, and that was great. But I mean, you don't insult people, walk in the room, and insult them, but there is a certain amount of confidence you have to have. Joel Schumacher brought me on a film, and he said, you're not going to do this. He said, you're too kind-hearted, too sweet, and the guy's got to be a real degenerate, horrible person in it. I said, okay, but I do have something for you I'm going to do next year or something like that. And I think it was with Phil Seymour Hoffman, and there was a guy, I don't know if the guy had a stroke, he was a security guard that was prejudiced against gays, something like that. And it wound up De Niro played the character, I think, so that was the simple answer. But I mean, I remember he really always wanted to put me in something, Joel. And he was just totally honest and honorable. Oh, you don't want to do that. It's another, but it's a case sometimes not only of becoming relaxed, but you don't have to push and sell yourself so much.
Right.
Just be there, and listen, pay attention. Sometimes I would say the stupidest things, or if they were trashing someone, or I knew that they had been, I don't know, it's an old street, I don't know what it is, and it would wind up, could be self-destructive, where I would say, no, but let me tell you, he was a good person, stand up and say, why don't you just, sometimes you don't always have to fight every battle or fights, sometimes you just got to listen and look at him, because it wasn't, I mean, unless someone said he's a horrible human being, and I say, no, don't say that, but when someone says, oh yeah, he did this and that was with him, sometimes you just have to let things go by. And when he told me he liked The Bodyguard, the answer was just say, oh, thank you. It was a great experience, because it was. And I learned a lot from Kevin and Mick Jackson directing. Whitney was just a delight to be with. And, with Gary and Bill Cobbs and Gary Kemp and people on that, I just had so much fun. And even big people came in and did, Robert did special spots. And the fellow Richard from Chill was it on the West Wing. He came in and he hadn't done West Wing yet, but it was a great experience. If I would have just said that, yeah, that was my first LA movie, I was brought out for, and this and that, and it's simple as that. And I learned, and Kevin crafted the character and helped me about the arc, and I became still friends with the stunt coordinator, Norman Howell. It's just, why don't you say that? But all of a sudden, I was just so excited about doing this film with De Niro, and that I got a Richard Price script, and that I got to do this very specific character. And what the hell was I selling? It didn't fit for the character I was playing, and it had nothing to do with anything.
Right.
So again, I yap too much sometimes, but I mean, sometimes it's great, and then other times you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, like the man says in the song.
Absolutely. Well, Mike Starr, thank you so much for being here for part 2. You have such a fascinating story to tell, and you've been a part of so many wonderful experiences. We'd love to have you back for a part 3.
Oh, I'm ready for part 3.
Yeah, we've got so much more to talk to you about, so really looking forward to that. Appreciate you being here. For Mike Starr, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave your comments. Love to hear from you, the fans, as always. And we will see you all next time.
And by the way, I talk so much that I see my iPad says I'm in the low power mode.
Nothing wrong with that. It was a great,
plug it in.
great chat indeed. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.